She served me at the airport, while other soldiers hugged their kids. I opened the envelope right there, restraining order, accused of abuse, while I was deployed, barred from my own children, my dog, my home. And that wasn't the worst part. 2 hours later, I called the school to check on my son. We've been instructed not to release information to you. Claire, my wife, had erased me everywhere. Phone blocked, socials gone. But she forgot one thing. I installed cloud cameras before my second tour. And they didn't just record her lover moving in. They recorded everything. Every kiss, every lie, every detail of their plan to legally vanish me. Now I had less than 5 days to flip the script she spent 6 months writing. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Brandon Riker, and I'm 34 years old. After 3 Army deployments and 13 years of service, I spend most evenings on my Kansas porch swing, nursing whiskey and counting down to retirement. My wife Claire, who I married right after high school at 21, used to be my anchor through every tour, sending care packages that smelled like her garden and writing letters that kept me sane in the desert heat. These days, though, her texts come shorter, colder. Last week, she missed our weekly video call, blaming some deadline with her coworker Jake. Something in my gut tightens when she mentions work lately. Good thing I never told her about those security cameras I installed around the house 2 years ago, all quietly backing up to the cloud. But let me start from the beginning. The weeks before coming home should have been full of excitement, but Claire's messages kept getting stranger. At first, it was just delayed responses to my texts about arrival plans. Then came the short, clipped replies when I'd ask about the kids. They're fine. Busy with school stuff. That was it. No pictures, no updates about Tommy's baseball games or Sarah's dance recitals. Just nothing. You know that feeling when something's off but you can't put your finger on it? That's where I was, stuck in this loop of second-guessing myself. Maybe I was reading too much into things. Claire had been handling everything alone for nearly a year. 2 kids, a full-time job, the house. That'd wear anyone down. 3 days before my flight, I tried video calling. No answer. An hour later, I got a text. Sorry, was in a meeting with Jake. Kids are at activities. Talk soon. Jake, her coworker. His name kept popping up more and more lately. The morning I landed at Kansas City International, my stomach was in knots. Not the usual homecoming jitters. Something deeper, darker. I grabbed my duffel from baggage claim, straightened my uniform, and headed for the arrival area. Claire had always been there before, kids bouncing beside her, holding those handmade, welcome home daddy signs. This time I found a man in a cheap suit holding a manila envelope. Brandon Riker? He asked, already knowing the answer. Yeah, that's me. My throat went dry. You've been served. He thrust the envelope at me and walked away. Right there, surrounded by other soldiers reuniting with their families, I opened that envelope. The words hit me like mortar fire. Emergency restraining order. Petitioner, Claire Riker. My hands started shaking as I read the allegations. Unstable behavior, threatening messages, potential for violence due to PTSD. All lies, every single word. I hadn't even been in the country, for Christ's sake. How could I have threatened anyone? The order barred me from coming within 500 feet of our house, Claire, or the kids. I couldn't call, text, or even email. My own home, my children, all suddenly off limits because of claims I couldn't possibly have done. Ever been kicked in the chest while you're already down? That's what it felt like reading the judge's name at the bottom of that order. Harold Matthews. I recognized it from a news story 6 months back. Something about him fast-tracking suspicious restraining orders without proper evidence. The story died quick, but rumors persisted about certain lawyers knowing how to work his court. I ended up at the Airport Inn, a place that smelled like stale cigarettes and broken dreams. Sitting on the edge of that squeaky bed, I spread out the paperwork under the flickering fluorescent light. My military ID and honorable discharge papers lay next to the restraining order. 13 years of spotless service reduced to potential evidence of violent tendencies. The woman who wrote those lies, she wasn't the Claire I knew. My Claire used to send me drawings from the kids with hearts and stars all over them. She'd mail me socks because she knew how much I hated wet feet during patrols. She'd plan movie nights for when I came home on leave, complete with my favorite snacks and the kids' favorite blankets. Now she was painting me as some kind of monster. I picked up my phone out of habit, wanting to call her, to ask why. But that would only make things worse. The restraining order made sure of that. One wrong move and I'd end up in cuffs. My career truly in ruins. The clock on the nightstand blinked 11:47 p.m. Somewhere across town, my kids were probably sleeping in their beds, maybe wondering why Daddy hadn't come home today. And Claire? Was she sleeping soundly, knowing what she'd done? Or was she lying awake thinking about the man who'd loved her since high school, now forced to sleep in a cheap motel because of her lies? I kept staring at Judge Matthews's signature, that arrogant scrawl at the bottom of the page. Something about it, combined with the timing of everything, it was too perfect, too practiced. This wasn't just Claire having doubts or falling out of love. This was calculated, professional. That first night in the motel, I must have picked up my phone 100 times. Each time my finger hovered over Claire's number, muscle memory fighting against reality. Finally, around 2 a.m. I hit dial. The number you are trying to reach has been blocked. Of course it had. Morning brought no clarity. I tried calling the kids' school, thinking maybe I could at least find out how they were doing. The secretary's voice went from friendly to frost the moment I gave my name. "I'm sorry, Mr. Riker, but we have specific instructions regarding information release. Due to pending legal matters, all inquiries need to go through Mrs. Riker or her attorney." I sat in my truck in the school parking lot watching other parents drop off their kids. Normal people living normal lives. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. What was Claire telling people? What was she telling our children? That's when I remembered Dan, Claire's older brother, 20 years on the force before retiring last spring. We weren't close. He and Claire had some falling out years back, but he'd always been straight with me. I could still hear his words from my wedding day. "Call me if trouble ever lands dirty." Well, trouble hadn't just landed dirty. It had cratered my entire life. I found his number in my old contacts and dialed, half expecting another blocking message. But it rang. "Brandon?" His voice was gruff, surprised. "Been a while." "Yeah. Listen, Dan. I need help. Claire's..." I heard. He cut me off. "Word travels fast in law enforcement circles. Meet me at Denny's on Hampton. 1 hour." The diner was mostly empty when I arrived. Dan sat in a back booth, coffee already in front of him. He'd aged since I'd last seen him, more gray in his beard, deeper lines around his eyes. But that cop's alertness hadn't faded. "You look like hell," he said as I slid into the booth. "Feel worse." I ordered coffee when the waitress came by, but my stomach was too knotted for food. "Dan, none of this makes sense. I haven't even been in the country. How can she claim I'm threatening her?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Something's off about this whole thing. That judge she's using, Matthews, he's got a reputation. Rubber stamps these orders like they're parking tickets. Usually works with specific lawyers, too." My coffee arrived. I wrapped my hands around the mug, needing its warmth. Would you be willing to drive by the house? Just see what's going on?" Dan studied me for a long moment. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" He sighed, rubbing his face. "Yeah, I'll check it out. Give me till tonight." I spent the rest of the day pacing my motel room, checking my phone every few minutes. Around 9, it finally rang. "You better sit down for this," Dan said without preamble. My legs felt weak. I sank onto the bed. "Tell me, place looks completely different, Brandon. New furniture everywhere, walls repainted, some kind of light blue. Your military photos, that flag display case, all gone." He paused. "And there's definitely someone else living there." The room started spinning. "How do you know?" "Men's work boots by the door. Size 11 if I had to guess. Not your brand. There's a truck in the driveway too. Newer model Ford, dark green. Check the plates. Registered to a Jake Hollister." Jake, the coworker she kept mentioning in texts. "That's not all," Dan continued. "Your garage workshop's been cleared out. All your tools, that vintage Harley you were restoring, gone, replaced with some home gym setup. I couldn't speak. Each detail was another bullet, another betrayal. While I was scanning horizons for threats, she was systematically erasing me from our home, from our life. Brandon? You still there? Yeah. My voice sounded distant even to myself. How long do you think, based on how settled everything looks? At least a few months. Maybe longer. Dan's tone softened slightly. Listen, what she's doing, using that restraining order to keep you away while she sets up her new life. It's not just wrong. It's calculated. And I've seen it before, usually with what? With veterans. It's like a playbook some people use. File false claims, get sympathetic judges, paint the returning soldier as unstable. By the time the truth comes out, they've already established new residency, new relationships, new everything. The phone nearly cracked in my grip. Claire hadn't just fallen out of love or found someone new. She'd orchestrated my complete removal, timed perfectly with my return, used my service against me, turned our home, the home I'd sent most of my pay to maintain, into ground zero for her new life. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. What else? I managed. You sure you want to hear this? Dan's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. Tell me everything. He took a deep breath. Your study's been turned into some kind of home office. All your military stuff, those shadow boxes with your medals, the unit photos, they're gone. Bathroom's got new toiletries. Definitely male. High-end stuff, not military issue. He paused. And Brandon, the family photos. They've all been replaced. New ones everywhere. Claire with some guy at the beach at restaurants. They look comfortable together. My stomach lurched. The room felt too small, too hot. The kids? They're in some of the photos too, looking happy. Dan's voice turned hard. Listen, I took pictures of everything. Documentation. You might need it. I barely heard him. My hands were already moving, pulling up Facebook on my phone. Claire had blocked me there too, but I remembered her coworker Sarah's account was public. 3 scrolls down, and there it was. 6 months ago, a sunny day at Lake Wilson. Claire in a blue sundress leaning against some guy with perfect teeth and a country club tan. The caption read, "So happy for Claire's new beginning. Jake's exactly what she needed. Blessed." Jake. The name hit like a body blow. You okay? Dan asked. No. I kept scrolling. More photos emerged. Dinner parties, office celebrations, even a Christmas gathering at what used to be my house. Jake's arm always around Claire's waist, our kids tucked against him like they belonged there. The timeline was damning. These started while I was still deployed, still sending her letters, still believing in us. She didn't just replace me, I said, my voice hollow. She erased me, like I never existed. Dan cleared his throat. Brandon, this isn't the first time I've seen this. What do you mean? On the force, we'd get cases sometimes. Women who'd use a soldier's deployment to set things up. Change the narrative while he couldn't defend himself. By the time he got back, the legal groundwork was laid. Restraining orders, custody arrangements, asset division. All based on claims he couldn't contest, because he wasn't even in the country. The knot in my gut tightened. How often? Too often. Some lawyers even specialize in it. They know exactly which judges will sign off, exactly how to phrase things. He paused. The timing of Claire's order, right before your return, that wasn't random. I thought about all those delayed responses, those dodged video calls. She planned this. All of it. Probably for months, Dan agreed. The house changes, the new relationship, the legal moves. It's coordinated, professional. My hand shook as I set down my phone. Dan, could she have planted something? To make the restraining order stick? The silence that followed told me everything. It happens, he finally said. Things that would make a soldier look unstable. PTSD evidence, threatening letters, weapons. The room started spinning again. I'd spent 13 years in service, building a record so clean it squeaked. Now Claire could destroy it all with a single planted item, and I wouldn't even be allowed in the house to defend myself. Brandon? Dan's voice snapped me back. You still there? Yeah. I swallowed hard. Just processing. Look, I know this is hell, but you can't lose focus now. Claire's got lawyers, a sympathetic judge, and a 6-month head start on spinning this story. You need to think clearly. He was right. The soldier in me knew he was right. But the husband, the father, those parts of me were drowning in waves of betrayal so deep I could barely breathe. I trusted her, I whispered. Through 3 deployments, I trusted her. I know. Dan's voice softened again. And that trust is exactly what she used against you. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The silence in Dan's garage felt like a physical weight. I sat there, shoulders slumped, staring at nothing while my world crumbled. 13 years of service, of doing everything right, and this was my homecoming. Banned from my own house, labeled dangerous, separated from my kids by a piece of paper filled with lies. You need to eat something, Dan said, pushing a sandwich toward me. I couldn't even look at it. What if she planted evidence? The words came out raw. What if she put something in the house that makes me look? I couldn't finish. Don't go there. Dan's voice was firm. That's exactly what they want, to get in your head, make you spiral. But I was already spiraling. The thought of Claire methodically building a case against me, maybe even coaching our kids to say things. My hand started shaking so bad I had to grip the workbench. I can't. My throat closed up. I can't lose them, Dan, the kids. If the court believes her, then we fight smart. He pulled up a chair. But right now you can't contact her. Can't post about this online, can't even drive by the house. One wrong move and that restraining order becomes permanent. I nodded numbly, trying to focus on his garage instead of the panic rising in my chest. Tools lined the walls in perfect order. Dan always was methodical even after leaving the force. Old boxes stacked neatly in corners. A metal lockbox caught my eye, dusty and dented. Something tugged at my memory. That box. We'd used it years ago when I first installed the lawn cameras, kept backup footage there in case the system. I sat up straight, heart suddenly pounding. The cameras. What cameras? Security cameras. I installed them before my second tour. Whole system, connected to cloud storage. The words tumbled out faster. Claire wanted them for safety while I was gone. They cover the front yard, back patio, garage. Dan leaned forward. When's the last time you checked them? Never needed to. But the company. I was already pulling out my phone, fingers trembling as I searched for the number. If they're still running, if she didn't find them. Slow down, Dan cautioned. Even if they work, accessing them might violate. No. Finally, something I was sure about. The account's in my name. Systems registered to me. She can't block legal access to my own security service. The phone rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. I gave my name, account number, date of birth. Each correct answer made my pulse race faster. And your security password, Mr. Riker? I closed my eyes. What had I used? Something about Claire, probably. Then I remembered. Our first date spot. Riverside Park, all lowercase. A pause. Perfect. I've reset your portal access. You should receive a confirmation email shortly. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type the URL. Dan moved behind me, watching over my shoulder as I entered my credentials. If this works, he started. I know. The page loaded. Folders appeared, organized by date. Recent ones right on top. I clicked. The feed opened, and there it was, crystal clear footage of my own home. Multiple angles time-stamped with audio. 6 months of evidence automatically uploaded and saved while Claire thought she was rewriting history. Holy shit, Dan whispered. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stared at the screen, at proof I wasn't crazy, wasn't dangerous, wasn't what she claimed. Proof that might save everything. We need to be smart about this, Dan said, gripping my shoulder. Careful what we download, how we use it. One wrong move. I know. I finally found my voice. But Dan, she didn't just lie. She conspired. And now we can prove it. The portal's interface felt both familiar and strange as I navigated through folders. Each click brought me closer to answers I wasn't sure I wanted. Start with recent stuff first, Dan suggested, pulling up another chair. Work backwards. I nodded, throat tight. The timestamp showed footage from just 3 weeks ago. My finger hovered over the play button for a second before I pressed it. The front porch came into crystal clear focus. There was Claire, looking nothing like the worried wife she'd portrayed in her messages to me. She was laughing, arms wrapped around a tall guy with styled hair and an expensive watch. Jake. They kissed right there, bold as brass, before he punched in the garage code. My garage code. Like he'd done it 1,000 times. Son of a bitch, Dan muttered. Wait. I held up my hand as audio kicked in. And the lawyer says it's basically guaranteed, Claire was saying, her voice carrying clearly through the camera's mic. Brandon won't know what hit him. Jake grinned, pulling her close. Good thing I can afford the filing fees, baby, and everything else once this plays out. My stomach churned. I clicked through to another clip, this one from inside the nursery where we'd raised both our kids. Claire was on the phone, sitting in the rocking chair I'd refinished myself during her first pregnancy. I'm telling you, Sarah, it's perfect timing, she giggled, while filling out papers. By the time he comes back, the house will be ours legally. Jake's already talked to his lawyer friend about the restraining order angle. Dan's hand gripped my shoulder. Keep going. We need more. For the next hour, we combed through footage. Claire and Jake redecorating rooms I'd painted. Claire telling neighbors I had issues from deployment. Jake bragging about how they'd handle the soldier boy if I caused trouble. But the worst clip came from just 5 days ago. Claire at the kitchen table, restraining order forms spread out in front of her, laughing on speakerphone. No, listen, it's brilliant, she was saying. The judge always sides with the wife in these cases, especially when the husband's been away fighting. PTSD, unstable behavior, they eat that stuff up. And since Brandon's still overseas, he can't even defend himself. More laughter. Plus, once the temporary order's in place, he can't come near the house. Can't access accounts. Can't even post about it online or it's harassment. Jake's friend says it works every time with military guys. The rage building in my chest must have shown on my face because Dan squeezed my shoulder again. Easy, he warned. We've got her. But we need to be smart about this. I forced myself to breathe. How many clips should we save? As many as we can verify clearly. Audio's crucial, proves premeditation. Dan was already pulling out his phone. I know a guy who can authenticate these files, prove they haven't been altered. I scrolled through more footage, each new clip feeling like another knife in my back. She really thought this through. Used my service against me. Used the system against me. It happens more than you'd think, Dan said grimly. But most guys don't have security cameras they forgot about. A new clip started playing. Claire and Jake in the master bedroom. My medals now replaced by his framed business degree. Once the court date hits, she was saying, he'll be so blindsided he won't know what to do. Perfect setup. I clicked stop, unable to watch more. How long until court? Dan checked his watch. 5 days, we need to move fast, get these authenticated, get them to your lawyer, build the counter case. 5 days. After months of Claire's planning, I had less than a week to turn it all around. But watching her laugh about destroying my life, about using my service as a weapon, something hardened inside me. She thinks I'm coming in blind, I said quietly. Thinks I'm walking into an ambush with no intel, no support, no proof. Dan nodded slowly. The element of surprise. Just like old times, huh? For the first time since landing on U.S. soil, I felt the fog of confusion lifting. The mission was clear now. The enemy identified, the objective locked. Pull up that clip of her filling out the restraining order again, I said. Let's make sure we don't miss a single detail. The next morning hit me like a freight train. My head throbbed from too many hours staring at screens, but Dan was already at my motel door with coffee and his old case organizer, a beat-up leather briefcase he'd used during his detective days. First rule of building a case, he said, spreading papers across the small table. Everything needs a timeline. Every piece needs context. I rubbed my eyes, remembering countless mission briefings that started the same way. Where do we start? Beginning. We track Claire's behavior changes, match them to Jake's first appearance, then document every calculated move. Dan pulled out color-coded sticky notes. Yellow for suspicious activity, red for direct evidence of deception, blue for legal filing prep. You know what's funny? Even after 20 years of marriage, I'd never seen Claire's true planning skills until I watched her destroy my life through a camera lens. Here, I said, pulling up the earliest relevant clip. March 15th. Jake's first dinner visit while I was deployed. Dan made notes, his cop instincts kicking in. Body language says they'd met before. Look how comfortable they are. We worked through breakfast and into afternoon. Every clip needed verification. Date, time, clear audio. My lawyer had warned us that authentication would be crucial. One corrupted file could poison the whole well. Hold up, Dan said around mid-afternoon. This conversation here, about Jake's lawyer friend coaching them, that's conspiracy to commit perjury. I leaned in, listening to Claire's casual tone as she discussed using my PTSD against me. The same woman who'd once written me letters about how proud she was of my service. The restraining order wasn't just about keeping me away, I realized. It was about making sure I couldn't defend myself when they took everything. Dan nodded grimly. Classic isolation tactic, but they forgot one thing. What's that? Criminals always think they're smarter than everyone else. He tapped the screen. That's why they get caught. We spent 3 full days building our case. Every morning started with coffee and determination. Every night ended with eye strain and fury. But piece by piece, we assembled the truth. Claire planning the restraining order, documented. Jake moving in while I was deployed, documented. Their conversations about using my service record against me, documented. The systematic erasure of my existence from my own home, documented. The thing about video evidence, Dan explained while organizing our final timeline, is that it doesn't just show actions, it shows intent. He was right. The footage revealed more than an affair. It exposed a calculated takedown. The way Claire laughed about manipulating the system, how Jake bragged about his lawyer connections, the casual cruelty of their planning sessions. On the 4th morning, we met my lawyer at his office. I'd warned him we had evidence, but watching his face as the first clips played was something else. The color drained from his features as Claire's voice filled his office. The judge always sides with the wife in these cases, especially when the husband's been away fighting. He literally stumbled backward, catching himself against his desk. This is an ambush, he mumbled, staring at the screen where Claire and Jake were discussing their timeline for taking my home. That's what they planned for me, I said quietly. Figured I'd walk into court blind. The lawyer kept watching, his hand trembling slightly as he took notes. Clips of Claire filling out false statements. Jake coaching her on what to claim. Both of them laughing about using my service-related stress as a weapon. In 15 years of practice, the lawyer finally said, I've never seen conspiracy documented this clearly. They didn't just cheat, they plotted, coordinated, created false legal narratives while knowing you couldn't respond. Dan shifted forward. What can we do with it? Everything. The lawyer was already reaching for his phone. The restraining order gets thrown out. The custody arrangement gets reviewed. And Mrs. Riker, he paused looking at me. She's facing serious consequences for perjury. I thought about Claire's smug certainty that I'd never see this coming. About how she'd used my absence, my service, as a weapon against me. The rage was still there, but now it had purpose. How fast can we move? I asked. I'm calling the judge's office right now. The lawyer was already dialing. With evidence this clear, we can request an emergency hearing. Dan caught my eye and nodded slowly. In less than 24 hours, Claire's perfect plan would shatter, and she'd never see it coming. The courthouse lobby felt different that morning. Maybe it was the weight of the evidence USB in my pocket, or maybe it was finally having solid ground under my feet. Either way, I stood straighter than I had since coming home. Through the glass doors, I caught Claire's arrival. Perfectly pressed business suit, not a hair out of place. Jake trailed behind her like an expensive shadow, his watch catching the morning light. They had a lawyer I didn't recognize, the kind whose suit probably cost more than my current motel stay. You know what's funny about people who think they've won before the fight? They get sloppy. Claire didn't even glance my way as they passed, too busy whispering to her attorney. Jake, though, he shot me this smirk that made my jaw clench. The same smirk he probably wore while moving into my house. The bailiff called us in right at 9. I took my seat alone while Claire's trio arranged themselves across the aisle, all confidence and careful choreography. My lawyer had insisted on entering separately with the equipment, said it would have more impact that way. The judge entered, a stern-faced woman who'd probably seen every trick in the book. She started with Claire's side, letting them lay out their story about my unstable behavior and concerning patterns. Claire's performance was something else. Voice trembling just right, eyes wide with practiced fear. I didn't want to file the order, Your Honor, but after his last deployment, the changes in him, she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I had to protect our children. The judge nodded, making notes. And there were no prior incidents? No history of concerning behavior? No, Your Honor, but the stress of service. Claire's voice wavered perfectly. Sometimes it changes people. I felt my teeth grinding but kept still. Let them dig deeper. The judge turned to me. Mr. Riker, these are serious allegations. Do you have any response to your wife's claims? That was our cue. My lawyer stepped in from the hallway, rolling a cart with a laptop and monitor. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Riker's claims are not only false, but deliberately manufactured. Claire's smile twitched. Just a flutter, but I caught it. What kind of evidence? The judge asked. Security camera footage from the Riker residence, Your Honor. Cloud-stored and time-stamped, covering the past 8 months. Jake straightened in his chair. Claire's hand froze mid-reach for her water glass. My lawyer connected the laptop to the courtroom's display system. This first clip is from March 15th, while my client was still deployed overseas. The footage started playing. Claire and Jake on our front porch, kissing before he entered his code into my garage keypad. The timestamp clear as day in the corner. Claire's attorney started to object, but the judge waved him down. Continue. Next clip. Claire in our living room, phone on speaker. Jake's lawyer friend says the restraining order is our best move. File it right before he lands. Claim PTSD symptoms. Jake's face had gone pale. Claire's perfect posture was cracking. And this, my lawyer continued, is from 2 weeks before Mr. Riker's return. The screen showed Claire and Jake in our kitchen laughing over wine. By the time he figures it out, Claire was saying, the house will be ours. These military types never think to check the legal angles. The judge's expression hardened. She held up a hand, stopping the playback. Mrs. Riker, would you care to explain this? Claire's mouth opened and closed. Her expensive lawyer was shuffling papers, probably searching for some procedural objection. Your Honor, Claire managed. Those clips they're taken out of context. The context seems quite clear. The judge cut in. Mr. Riker's attorney, how much more footage do you have? Over 30 hours, Your Honor, all showing systematic planning of false allegations and deliberate abuse of court processes. The judge removed her glasses, fixing Claire with a steel gaze. I'm calling a 30-minute recess to review this evidence in chambers. But Mrs. Riker, I suggest you and your counsel seriously reconsider your position. She turned to Jake. And sir, you may wish to seek separate representation. The gavel crack echoed through the suddenly silent courtroom. As the judge left, Claire finally looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time since I'd come home. The fear in her eyes wasn't practiced anymore. The bailiff called for recess, and my lawyer squeezed my shoulder. Don't say a word to them, he whispered. Let the footage do the talking. I nodded, watching Claire huddle with her attorney, her perfect world starting to crack. Jake stood apart, already distancing himself. The smirk was long gone. When court resumed 30 minutes later, the energy had shifted completely. The gallery was packed now. Word must have gotten around during recess. I spotted at least 3 reporters in the back row, notebooks ready. Remember those old war movies where they gather the whole unit to watch someone get drummed out? This felt like that, but with suits instead of uniforms. Claire sat ramrod straight, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. Jake had moved 2 chairs down, already playing the just a bystander card. The judge returned, face set like granite. Having reviewed the submitted footage, I'm ordering a full viewing for the custody hearing record. She nodded to the court clerk. Play the complete sequence. My lawyer had arranged the clips chronologically. First came the early footage, Claire and Jake's innocent meetings in our driveway. Then the house tours while I was deployed, their laughter as they planned new paint colors. Each scene punctuated by timestamps proving the premeditation. The audio was crystal clear. Once the restraining order hits, he won't be able to contest anything, Claire had said, sprawled on our couch, our wedding photo face down on the coffee table. The PTSD angle is perfect. No judge questions that anymore. Jake's voice. You're sure he won't find out about the cameras? Please. He probably forgot all about them. Soldiers don't think that far ahead. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. I caught Dan's eye from his seat near the door. He gave me a slight nod. Steady, that nod said. Let it play out. The footage kept rolling. Claire coaching Jake on using my tools, my garage code, teaching him my kids' bedtime routines. Each clip another nail in their coffin of lies. Mrs. Riker? The judge interrupted after a particularly damning scene. Were you aware that filing false statements with this court constitutes perjury? Claire's perfect posture crumbled. Your Honor, I was under tremendous stress. That's not what the footage suggests. The judge's tone could have frozen hell. You're looking at serious charges. Mr. Merrill as well, for conspiracy to commit fraud. Jake's head snapped up. Your Honor, I wasn't. Save it for your own attorney, Mr. Merrill. You'll need one. More whispers from the gallery. More scribbling from the reporters. The sound of careers imploding tends to draw attention. Claire started crying, not the delicate tears from earlier, but ugly mascara-running sobs. Her lawyer looked like he'd swallowed something sour. The judge continued. I'm vacating the restraining order immediately. Furthermore, I'm recommending a complete custody review. She turned to my attorney. Submit your petition for emergency temporary custody by end of day. My fists clenched in my lap. Not from anger anymore, from the pure voltage of justice finally flowing through proper channels. Additionally, the judge went on, I'm ordering Mrs. Riker to appear for a perjury hearing next week. Mr. Merrill, you'll be receiving your own summons. She fixed them both with a look that could wilt steel. The court takes a very dim view of parties who abuse its processes to destroy innocent lives. Claire's lawyer stood. Your Honor, if we could discuss this in chambers. That time has passed, Counselor. Your client made her choices, now she can face them publicly. The judge gathered her papers. We're adjourned. Mr. Riker, remain for custody paperwork. As people started filing out, I caught fragments of conversations. Can't believe she did that to a veteran. Did you see the timestamp on that garage footage? Wonder if his command knows about this. Claire stumbled past me, makeup streaked, clutching her designer purse like a shield. Jake didn't even look up, just followed his shoes toward the exit. Their perfect fraud, unraveled by the same cameras they'd laughed about. Dan appeared at my shoulder. You good? I nodded, watching the reporters trail after Claire and Jake. Yeah, just processing. Take your time, brother. He squeezed my shoulder. Justice ain't always quick, but she shows up eventually. The courtroom emptied except for me, my lawyer, and the clerk with the custody forms. Through the windows I could hear the media circus building outside, but in here, in this moment, there was just the quiet scratch of pens making things right again. 3 days after the hearing, my lawyer called with news that made my hands shake. The judge's final ruling just came down. The restraining order's been completely vacated, ruled fraudulent on all counts. I had to sit down. And custody? Full custody granted, effective immediately. Claire's visitation will be supervised until further notice. He paused. Brandon, this is a complete victory. The judge even cited your service record as evidence of character. The irony wasn't lost on me. Claire had tried to use my military background to destroy me. Instead, it helped save me. Later that afternoon, Dan texted, Heads up, Claire's workplace is buzzing. Jake's been put on leave. Seems the company doesn't appreciate employees who conspire against deployed veterans. I wasn't surprised. News travels fast in Kansas, especially when reporters camp outside courthouses. By week's end, Claire's carefully crafted social circle had crumbled. Amazing how quickly friends disappear when the truth comes out. The following Monday, I pulled into my driveway for the first time in what felt like years. The garden was overgrown, my old projects half finished under Jake's attempted improvements, but none of that mattered. I was home. Dan met me there with the new keys and court papers. "House is yours again, brother. Did a sweep yesterday, they cleared out fast." "Thanks." I meant it for more than just the keys. For everything. He shrugged it off in that way cops do. Justice matters. Family matters more. The garage door groaned open. They hadn't maintained it properly. Inside, past the scattered tools and abandoned DIY disasters, sat a stack of boxes I recognized. One was marked, "Service Dog Gear," in my own handwriting. Remember how I said old soldiers trust their tremors? Well, my hands were steady as I lifted that box. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. The vest, the patches, the special leash we'd trained with. A wet nose pressed against my leg. I didn't need to look down. Some bonds never break, no matter how long the separation. "Hey, girl," I whispered, scratching behind her ears. "Miss me?" The local shelter had kept her safe after Claire tried claiming I'd abandoned her. Another lie that backfired. Service dogs come with paperwork, and mine was ironclad. Sitting there on the concrete floor, running my fingers through familiar fur, something inside me finally unlocked. Not healing. That would take time. But maybe understanding. You see, Claire had tried to erase me, thinking absence meant weakness. She forgot that soldiers learn to rebuild from ruins. Dan appeared in the doorway. "Kids'll be here in an hour. School's releasing them to you directly." I nodded, still focused on the dog gear. "We've got some catching up to do, don't we, girl?" She wagged her tail, already wearing that patient service dog expression. Some things really don't change. "You know," Dan said, "Claire called me yesterday, crying about reputation damage, lost friends. Said she never meant it to go this far." I kept unpacking the box, letting my hand stay busy. Funny how consequences work. That's what I told her. He leaned against the workbench. She thought she was smarter than everyone, smarter than the cameras, smarter than karma. The vest came out last, still crisp despite storage. My unit patch gleamed on the side, a reminder that some oaths run deeper than marriage vows. My dog sat perfectly still as I slipped the vest over her head, muscle memory making quick work of the straps. The click of each buckle felt like coming home in ways the house alone couldn't match. "Ready to go inside, girl?" I asked, standing up. She rose smoothly, falling into perfect heel position. Through the garage door, I could see our old garden spot, overgrown now, but salvageable. Maybe that's where we'd start rebuilding. Dan pushed off from the workbench. "Need help getting the kids settled?" "Nah." I grabbed the leash, its familiar weight grounding me. "We've got this. Don't we, girl?" She looked up at me with those steady eyes, and I swear she understood everything. That's the thing about loyalty, real loyalty. It waits, it endures, it comes back stronger. The next afternoon hit different. You know that feeling when you wake up and everything's exactly where it should be? That was me standing in my kitchen, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise paint my backyard gold. My dog dozed at my feet, her vest hanging ready by the door. Around 10, I wandered out to survey the damage to my garden. Claire had let everything go wild, weeds choking out the perennials I'd planted before my last deployment. Remember those care package photos she used to send? Her kneeling proud beside the roses I'd chosen? Funny how memories shift when you see the truth behind them. "What do you think, girl?" I asked, crouching down to pull at a particularly stubborn dandelion. "Time to start fresh?" She wagged her tail, nose already busy investigating the overgrown corners. Some of my old tools were still there, rusted but serviceable. I'd always found peace in yard work, something about the simplicity of it, the way you could see progress happening right under your hands. The mulch Claire and Jake had scattered lay in uneven piles, more for show than function. I started raking it back, revealing the good soil underneath. Each stroke felt like reclaiming territory, like those careful sweeps we'd do in the field, making sure every inch was secure. Dan drove by around noon, honked twice. He'd been doing that, checking in without hovering. Good man, my brother-in-law. Understood the need for space while keeping watch all the same. The afternoon sun beat down as I cleared the last of the weeds. Sweat dripped, but it felt right. Honest work, fixing what was broken. My dog stayed close, occasionally bringing me old tennis balls she'd discovered under the brush. Each time I'd throw one, watch her bound after it with the same enthusiasm she'd shown years ago. Getting there, I muttered, surveying the cleaned beds. The foundation was solid. Claire hadn't managed to kill everything. Some of my original plantings had survived, stubborn as old soldiers. I took a break, sat on the back steps with a bottle of water. The flagpole caught my eye, still standing proud where I'd installed it our first summer here. Claire had used it for those cutesy seasonal banners she loved, but I had something better in mind. The flag of my unit had traveled with me through 3 tours, folded carefully in my footlocker. Dan had rescued it along with my other military items, kept them safe at his place. Now it was time to give it proper display. My hands remembered the way, how to attach the grommets, the precise tension needed. The fabric snapped crisp in the Kansas wind as I raised it, colors bold against the blue sky. My dog sat at attention, sensing the moment's weight. Standing there watching my unit's flag claim the breeze, something settled in my chest. This house, this ground, it had been my dream long before Claire twisted it. Now it would be my redemption, not just for me but for my kids who deserve to know their father's truth. I turned toward the security camera mounted under the eaves, the same one that had captured Claire's betrayal. But now it would record something different. Restoration, rebuilding, return. Looking straight into that lens, I felt the weight of everything. The deployment, the betrayal, the fight to reclaim what was mine. But mostly, I felt the strength that comes from standing on solid ground again. My voice came steady, charged with the kind of pride you earn by walking through fire. Never bet against a man with nothing left but truth. The flag snapped once in the wind, like punctuation. My dog pressed against my leg, grounding me in the moment. Together we surveyed our territory, the cleaned garden beds waiting for new growth, the house standing ready for fresh memories, the flag declaring who and what we were. Claire had tried to bury me. Instead, she'd just planted the seeds of something stronger. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.